Imagine you waking up in the middle of the night, but something is wrong. Your body doesn't respond. Your arms, pinned down. Your legs, tied tightly against the wood of the bed. Sweat runs down your forehead, burning like fire. The fever isn't just heat, it's delirium. The room spins. The shadows on the walls move as if they were alive. And then you realize it wasn't an accident. It was them. Your own family. Your mother holds your face crying. Your father avoids looking into your eyes. They are afraid of you. Because in the Middle Ages, when you got sick, you stopped being human. You turn your head and you see him, the doctor, or rather the barber surgeon. Dirty hands, black nails, and in his hand, a rusty blade being sharpened slowly. The sound of the metal scraping echoes through the room like a death sentence. You try to scream, but your voice doesn't come out. You try to break free, but the ropes tighten even more on your skin. And then someone whispers, "It's for your own good." But you know it isn't, because in that world, a simple toothache could kill you. A fever could turn you into a monster in everyone's eyes. And the worst of all, it wasn't the disease that killed the most. It was the cures, cuts, blood, infections, procedures done without any understanding, just desperation, superstition, and fear. In the Middle Ages, getting sick wasn't bad luck. It was a sentence where you were immobilized, silenced, and handed over to people who believed they were saving you, while they slowly killed you. Now tell me, if you were there, tied to your own bed, who would you trust? Because what comes next doesn't get better. It only gets worse, a lot worse. If you want to understand how far human beings can go when they don't understand their own body, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell, because in the next moment, you're going to discover things so brutal that they'll make you thankful for every headache you've ever had. Before the disease arrived, life was already a daily struggle. You wake up to the smell. It isn't a light smell, it's heavy, damp, stuck in the air. A mix of feces, urine, spoiled food, and bodies that haven't seen water in weeks. Your house doesn't have real windows. Light comes in weakly. The air doesn't circulate. The floor, packed dirt, often covered with leftovers from the day before. And no, you don't have a bathroom. Everything is thrown into the street. Buckets of waste being dumped out the windows, falling exactly where people walk, eat, live. Now imagine that every single day. That was the normal. The food? Poorly preserved meat, hard bread, contaminated water, and you eat because you have no choice. Because in that world, surviving was already a victory. Life expectancy? 30, 40 years, if you were lucky. And don't think this was only for the poor. Even kings, surrounded by wealth, died young without understanding why, without knowing they were being slowly poisoned by invisible diseases that no one could explain. You didn't live wondering if you were going to get sick. But when, because all it took was a small cut, a mild fever, an ignored pain, and everything would start to collapse. There were no hospitals like you know today. There was no diagnosis, there was no prevention, there was fear. A constant fear, silent, waiting for the right moment. And when the disease finally knocked on your door, you had nowhere to run, because what came after wasn't treatment. It was a ritual of survival that almost always ended in death. And this is where the real horror begins. Now you're already sick, high fever, weak body, confused mind, and then they begin first bloodletting. You are held down tightly, the blade pierces your skin, and the blood starts to flow. A lot of blood, because they believed the disease was in your blood, and that the more that came out the greater your chances of living. But what really happened? You only got weaker, closer to death, and they didn't stop. If the pain persisted, something worse came. Trepanation. Yes, drilling into your skull, without anesthesia, without hygiene, without any guarantee that you would survive. A hole in your head, to free the spirits that caused the disease. Now imagine feeling that, conscious. But it doesn't stop there. If you were lucky, they would still try cures that were less invasive. Like drinking urine, applying animal feces directly to your skin, or ingesting absurd mixtures made with herbs, blood, and organic remains. All of this, believing they were saving you. But in reality, they were pushing you even faster toward death. And when none of that worked, they tied you up. Yes, again, they tied your body to the bed to control your movements, or, in many cases, to wait for you to die without causing problems. There are reports of nobles, now even kings, ordering extreme treatments on their own children. One of them had the young prince bled repeatedly until the body simply couldn't take it anymore. He didn't die from the disease, he died from the cure, and this is the most disturbing point of all. In the Middle Ages, the greatest danger wasn't what you had, it was who tried to save you. And if you think this is already the bottom of the barrel, in the next block, you're going to see something even more terrifying, because the diseases that circulated in that world didn't just kill, they transformed people into something unrecognizable while they were still alive. Now forget the treatments for a second, because the real nightmare was what no one could see, the diseases. They didn't come with a warning, they had no explanation, and when they appeared, it was as if something was consuming you from the inside. In slow motion, leprosy. You look at your hands, and you notice something strange. The skin loses color, then sensitivity. Then it starts to disappear. Open wounds, exposed flesh, the smell impossible to ignore. And the worst, you're still alive, watching your own body rot. Now imagine the look of other people. The moment they realize you stop existing, you are isolated, expelled, abandoned, because for them you were no longer a person. You were a warning. But there was something even more cruel, the so-called St. Anthony's fire. It starts as a mild pain but quickly turns into hell. Your body burns from the inside. Hallucinations take over your mind. You see things that don't exist. You feel insects crawling under your skin. You scream. You beg. But no one understands. Your limbs darken, they necrotize, and simply fall off. Yes, they fall off. And while this is happening, the people around you believe you are possessed, because in that time there was no science. There was guilt. If you got sick, it was because you had done something wrong, because God was punishing you, or worse, because something evil had taken hold of you. And then came the judgments, the prayers, the rituals, the accusations, not to save you, but to make sense of the horror. And in the middle of all this, you weren't treated like someone who needed help. You were treated like a spectacle. People watched, they commented, they moved away. But no one really understood. And that's what makes everything even more disturbing. They didn't heal, they watched. They watched while you fell apart, piece by piece, without any hope. And when the fear became unbearable, humanity began to collapse. There comes a moment when the fear is so great that it overcomes any human bond. You are no longer a son. You are no longer a wife. You are no longer a father. You are a risk. And when that happens, people do unthinkable things. Entire families began locking the sick inside the house. Doors closed, windows blocked. Food being left outside when it was left at all. And little by little, silence. Because inside someone was dying. Alone, without a goodbye, without a touch, without dignity. Now imagine something even worse, being abandoned in the street. Weak body, no strength to get up, while people walk past you pretending you don't exist, because helping could mean dying together. And then the hospitals appear. But forget everything you know today. These places weren't healing centers, they were waiting rooms for death. The smell of blood, pus, feces, mixed with the constant sound of moans, screams, and desperate prayers. Bodies side by side, some alive, others already dead, with no one to separate them. You lie there, knowing exactly what awaits you. There is no hope in that place, only time. Time until your body gives in. And when the fear spreads too much, society enters collapse. People begin to self-flagellate in the streets, whipping themselves, trying to pay for their sins. Others accuse neighbors, women, healers, witches, because someone had to be blamed. Entire villages enter panic. Houses are burned, sometimes with people still inside, all in the name of trying to stop something that no one understood. And in the middle of this chaos, the question stops being how to cure and becomes who will survive. Because when the disease arrived, it didn't just take lives. It destroyed everything that made someone human. And this is where the story delivers one last blow. Because even after so much horror, all of this left marks and that still echo until today. After all this, one question remains that bothers you. How did humanity get out of this level of horror to the world you live in today? The answer is uncomfortable. It took centuries. For generations, pain was treated with ignorance, disease with superstition, and death as something inevitable. Medieval medicine not only failed to cure, it delayed the advance of science itself. Each repeated mistake, each absurd practice, each lost life was a misstep that kept humanity trapped in the dark. But, at the same time, it was from this chaos that the first real attempts to understand the human body emerged. People began to question, observe, challenge old beliefs, and slowly, very slowly, the dirty blade gave way to knowledge, desperation to investigation, fear to science. Today you take a pill, and the pain goes away. You take an antibiotic, and an infection that would have killed you in days disappears. Today you trust hospitals, doctors, diagnoses, but let me be direct with you. This is recent, much more recent than it seems. Because human beings, deep down, haven't changed that much. The fear is still here, disinformation too. And in moments of crisis, the line between reason and desperation becomes dangerously thin. You've seen this happen. Crowded hospitals, desperate people, conflicting information, people believing in miraculous cures, others refusing real treatments. The difference? Today we have tools. We have science, but we are still at one major crisis away from repeating the same mistakes. Maybe not with rusty knives, but with wrong decisions, with panic, with ignorance disguised as certainty. And that's why this story isn't just about the past. It's a warning. Because those people tied to their own beds, looking at someone who claimed to be trying to help, believed they were doing the best they could, just like many still believe today. So the next time you feel a headache or catch a mild fever, remember, there was a time when that too could be the beginning of the end. And if you made it this far, comment down below. I will never complain about a headache again. Because the truth is simple and brutal. The Middle Ages didn't completely disappear, it just evolved. And if you want to keep understanding the darkest moments of human history, those that show what we are really capable of, leave a like, subscribe to the channels, and get ready. Because in the next video, the horror will take on an even more merciless form.